Good afternoon. My name is David Hovel. I'm the proud husband of Bonnie Hovel, and we work with TLC, and this is a presentation that covers what I think I know in my long career about giving presentations to people about either difficult information, unfamiliar information, various things like that. This will be roughly 30 minutes of slides, 35 minutes of slides. Everybody's muted during this part of the talk. Then I'm going to unmute people and talk, and that take about 15 minutes or so for questions. We're doing video of this talk that will be available later from YouTube, privately within TLC. And your best bet, if you're on a computer, is to use full screen for this. Okay. This is the title of the talk, Presenting with Zoom. Now, this is actually going to be 3 different sections of video on different dates. And I call it subtitled The Medium, the Message, and the Mechanisms, because that's what it's about. It's about how do you convey information, what information should be conveyed, and the technology behind doing that. I'm going to go over the parts here, the parts of the talks and tell you what's going to happen in the future, but it will not happen today. What's happening today is part 1. Part 1, I call the medium and the message. I'm borrowing from Marshall McLuhan's famous book. Section 1 is the first part, and that is to convince you that when you're giving a talk, you're the medium. Nothing happens without your doing it. Therefore, that's a big burden, but it's also a tremendous opportunity. And I'm going to give you some advice on how to make the most of that. The second one is preparing the message. Even if you do a very good job of presentation, if your message is not concise or well understood or presented in a way that's suitable to your audience, it's going to fall flat. And that really is going to be the end of today's talk. Part 2 is going to be another Zoom presentation about presenting with Zoom. What do you do if you're either a meeting host or you're the primary presenter on Zoom? Because we're going to be doing this with the Your Keys to Senior Living folks. Hopefully we'll do it within TLC and putting these things up on YouTube or maybe just sharing them internally, depending on how well they come out. But that's going to be training in Zoom. Most everybody in TLC uses Zoom already, but there's some things about being a presenter that you may want to know. Part 3, we'll have to wait until we can actually get together in a rec center and be face-to-face, at least within some distance, social distancing required, to use actual audio and video equipment. We have audio and video equipment in TLC now, and of course every rec center has certain audio and video equipment which we will be using. But that, as I said, we'll wait until we get the green light from the powers that be in the villages. This is my caveat emptor slide. This means truth in lending. And caveat emptor means let the buyer beware, and I'm trying to tell you what this really is and what it really isn't. IMHO, that stands for in my humble opinion. First of all, I always have an opinion. I'm rarely humble, but it's my opinion. And if you don't agree with me or you think something else is not right, fine, don't do it. But think about the alternatives. Think about why I might have chosen the path I did. And if you still choose to reject it, that's fine. Your mileage may vary. A lot of what I'm doing is targeting the kind of presentation that TLC intends to give, the kind of things that's been going on in some of these care facilities, that have been going on in rec centers, where there's a big distance between the person on the stage and the people in the audience. There's different kinds of presentations, like when you're presenting to your bosses at work or your commanding officers in the military. I'm not talking about those. So the things I'm saying might have to be altered or changed for different circumstances. I'm going to say over and over again and again that you must practice. And I know there are some people who believe that they don't need to practice. And I know that I can sometimes convince myself that I don't. And then I actually do practice and realize I really needed to. You practice, you review, and that's with yourself and hopefully with some peers, and you exhibit patience. You're never going to do it perfectly, but these factors that I'm going to bring up today, this afternoon, can help you do the best that you can do with the material you have and your own skills. Now, these are introductory slides about the major chunks of the presentation. And the first 2 are for today. First part of today's section 1 is called You Are the Medium. And my definition here is a presentation is an intersection between your message, your personality, the forum, and your tools. Now, I just read from a slide. I'm going to tell you several times, don't do that. But what I'm talking about is the presentation as is experienced by someone involved is not you, just you. It's not just your message. It's not just the computer screen. It's the way they all come together. I call it an intersection, but it's more like a melange, a blend. To do this well, there are several things you must do. One is you have to master the tools. If you're uncertain about where your microphone is, or what happens if you touch your blouse, or which way the camera's facing, or whether your audience can hear you, all that's going to do is lead to internal uncertainty and nervousness, and that is the bane of presenters. You must work on your nervousness. And as everybody knows who's over the age of 5, you don't work on your nervousness by telling yourself not to be nervous. You work on your nervousness by dealing with what's inside and finding out why you're nervous and working with that. And the number one reason for nervousness is unfamiliarity, either with the material, the venue, the tools. You must have those down to be smooth and responsive and natural. Naturalness is so vital. Use your voice. Your voice is the only way you have to do this. And you might not like your voice. You might not think it works, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But you must use it and you must rely on it. And one of my messages in this is accept your voice. Listen to how you sound recorded. Listen to the varieties of it and recognize it like everyone else. The more confident you are, the more relaxed you are, and the better wired you are for sound, the more your voice is going to sound like what you'd like it to. You must use your personality and hopefully your sense of humor. This is what audiences are looking for. This is why they glom on. I mean, why do you think there's talk shows or late night TV? Because everybody loved, Jack Parr and Steve Allen's personality and Johnny Carson's personality and some of the others that are around these days. I'm not so fond of some of them. But the idea is that people are turning on mostly to see the personality and the humor. And that's what you bring people in with. And then when you're there, you share your subject matter, you share your knowledge. And that leads to conveyance of information. The knowledge itself won't do it, and your personality itself won't do it. It's that conjunction. Now you have to manage your time allocation. I'm going to prove that to you today, I hope, by not running over. And you must accept whatever limitations. If you don't sound perfect, if the lighting's not great, if there's people outside in the hallway milling around, or somebody's running, as it always happens in my house, somebody's running a lawn mowing episode outside in the front yard, so be it. You just move right on. Now, the next part of this first talk is going to be preparing the message. One thing that I think is absolutely vital, particularly from what I've seen in the TLC group, is to set clear, simple goals, a small number, simple goals. And we'll talk about this again. I don't want to belabor it here. You will rehearse, you relax, you repeat, and you learn how to interact with your audience. Because interacting is part of the message. Because if people have questions or problems, you must interact. When you're presenting, I have ways that you can find out if people are actually tracking. If they're not tracking, you're wasting your time and theirs. You've got to figure out if they're tracking. Okay. The second talk is going to be presenting with Zoom. And that's understanding how Zoom works and what it is, getting used to all the foibles and finickiness of Zoom. And then we'll start talking about dealing with the Zoom audience, like I just did. I muted everybody, how I do screen sharing, how you present documents, things like that. The final one, the one that's going to be live in person after they open up the rec centers, has to do with using audio and video equipment. And I'm not going to go into that today because there really isn't any point, since that's far off in the far-flung future. Okay, we are now into section 1 of this talk, and that is that you are the medium. And I subtitle this, Selling the Ideas and Yourself, because you cannot avoid it. You cannot be a bystander at your own presentation. You must take personal responsibility for both conveying the information and the belief in the information and the understanding of the information. You are it. You are the one who's in the limelight, and there's nothing you can do about that. What I'm going to try to do is give you some techniques that you can use to make that fun and easy. Number 1. You must accept your voice. Everybody probably remembers the first time she heard her own voice coming back from a recorder. Not fun, and often downright disconcerting. The primary way that you accept your voice is by the next 2 lines, relying on technology and relaxing, and you'll work with that. Now, if you have a live mic like I do, you have to be aware of things called plosives. And a plosive sounds like this, plosive. You notice that popping P that's really annoying? You don't want to do sibilants either, like S. See that? They distort the microphone and thus lead to real problems. Another great way to get your message across is know your materials backwards and forwards. Don't read off slides. I'm doing a little more of that than I would like to do because I care about this and I want people to get it. But your materials should be under your belt like part of you. And you shouldn't need to read anything. You should know what's on each slide, and you should be able to go right down it and paraphrase it in different ways depending on whether your audience is tracking or not. If they all get it and there's all a big nodding of heads, you can skip a whole slide, maybe even 2 or 3. If they don't, you have to say, why aren't they getting this? And you have to understand, go back, slow down, replay that in your head. Rehearsing, rehearsing, rehearsing. You will always learn something useful. I ate my own dog food, as we used to say at Microsoft. That refers to using your own products in your own daily work. I recorded this whole thing by myself with Bonnie and sent the video to Lou and got feedback from both of them on what I needed to do. The feedback was positive. Therefore, you're seeing basically what I did before. But if it hadn't been positive, I would have had to deal with that. You have to watch the elapsed time. And more than anything, with us and our elder audiences, you must be sure your audience can hear you. Ask for a show of hands. Make sure that your voice is clear without being overly loud, and make sure that everyone in there is comfortable with that, because otherwise it's all going to fall apart. You're going to start pushing, and as soon as most people who are untrained begin pushing with the voice begins to get raspy and it begins to sound a little angry or a little timid, and you don't want that. What you want is to sound like you're on your lanai at 5 o'clock, you're half a margarita down, and you're talking about something you love. That's what you want to sound like. You're a performer. Now, your personality is the key to opening the door. You want to open the door to the information that you've got, but you want people to be there when you open that door. You must reveal yourself. And that means the good, the bad, the fearful. I'm ugly, I'm fat. I've got something I've got to do later that I'm really worried about. Don't express that, but show the emotion behind it. Show the fact that you're a complete human being and you have your complications and your issues. And the main way that audiences will latch on like that, I mean, they literally will jump on the bus. They'll be falling over themselves to jump on the bus, is if you can find funny things to say. I use humor all the time because it does 2 things. One is they join me on the bus, and 2, I can tell if they're tracking. I will make a funny pun about something I've just said or something that has to do with the information I'm conveying. And if I get giggles, I'm on track. And if I get people looking at each other like, what did he just say? Then the fact is I'm off the rails and I need to fix it. Use your hands. Don't overdo it, but I'm trying to give an exemplar here of when I have a point to make, I bring my hands out. And one little thing that I'm picky about, never do this. People in commercials do this. I never see anyone in real life who is relaxed do this. Just use your hands the way you normally would, even if you didn't grow up in Italy. And moving gently is really important when you're on a video camera. You don't want to lurch from side to side and have your face go in and out of the frame. Smiling is good. No fake smiles. Like, I'm so glad to be here and I'm always a happy jerk. None of that. You want to smile to emphasize points or the things you like, but not over much. Now, about being human, about being natural, about revealing yourself. If you screw up, if you have on the wrong slide, or you get ahead of yourself, or you drop your pen, or you spill your water, whatever, just laugh, ask for forgiveness, tell them it doesn't always go perfectly. Get them with you as a human being, as a presenter. They're part of it. This is a way to get them to be part of it. And above all, the whole key, find the causes of your inner tension. If there are reasons why you're tense, if you need a cigarette, if you didn't drink enough water, if your shoes don't fit, if your clothes are tight, if it's too warm, if it's too cold, find out what that is. Don't sit and tell yourself, well, I should be fine, everything's great. Well, if it's not great, ask yourself why it's not great, because a lot of times a few little touches can fix a lot of that. You can ask whoever's doing the sound to bring it up. You can ask who's doing the lighting to bring it down. Find out why. If you're on video, you should be able to see your framing if you're in a decent video setup. Framing means where your head is. Now, because I have a big field of view in my camera, I don't really have to worry about that. I have to jump and up and run out of the room to be out of frame. But that's not always true. And another one, and I'm going to demonstrate this right now, is looking into the camera, because we all know the power of the human gaze. And I'm going to show you that when I'm actually looking right into the camera, and I'm looking, you think I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you, and in fact, I'm doing what every news head since Edward R. Murrow has done, and that's looked at the camera as a substitute for personal eye contact. And it's fakey, but it's real. And if you're giving a Zoom presentation or a recorded presentation, for those times when you think eye contact will matter, when you want to sell that piece of real estate that you've got in your mind, use eye contact. Okay, I'm going to go back and share again. Okay. Here, we're going to come into some information that many of you have already had and heard from me, and some of you have not. And I'm not going to name any names, but my general observation, and I'm just going to say this baldly, is most of the presentations that I've heard have too much information, too much detail, too many Part A, Section 3, Subparagraph B kind of stuff. I am a believer in sympathy, and in simplicity. And the reason I believe in simplicity is if it's really complicated, you can give them handouts beforehand. You can send them PDFs, ask them to review them, and then when you get up there, you're kind of just skimming down the material, waiting for people to raise hands and ask questions. If it's material that they're new to, but it's not simple, you can say, I will send you follow-up PDFs or questionnaires or whatever after it's over, and you can review that and we can have another session later. But the core of any given session is simple, simple, simple. You cannot teach detailed information in a lecture, and almost all the cognitive science that has been done in the last 30 years, or at least since the turn of the century, has said that the lecture model is effectively dead. And what I'm trying to show you is what you're really trying to do is toss out enough live bait to people to get them to nibble and look up the information on their own, because you cannot teach. You must entice people to get on the bus. First of all, in your talk, assume the audience knows nothing. And that means you must paraphrase or define every major concept or term that you're going to use. And this leads to a very simple idea. Avoid jargon and neologisms. Every field is full of them. One of the things I used to do all the time in computers was a bunch of guys would get into the vice president's office or the president's office and start talking. And the next thing you know, they're all 6 ways from Sunday because nobody knows the terms. And I would stand up and I would start explaining it in effectively baby talk. And I don't mean really baby talk, but I mean using a lot of analogies and comparisons to try to make things as simple as possible. Because as Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Even relativity can be explained to the young, maybe not 6, but how about 16? When you use terms and turns of phrase, do it consistently. Don't try to go back and be clever. Remember that this is not about clever. This is about conveying information. You can be clever with your peers, clever with your spouses, and clever in your memoirs. But when you're giving a public talk, what you want is people to go away nodding their heads saying, I'm glad I came. That's what you want. Now, you need to borrow or build a framework for the ideas. Now, since I've been working with TLC, I've seen 3-legged stools and four-cornered quadrants. There's obviously circles, and there's enneagrams, and a lot of other stuff. Enneagram's too complicated, but that's my opinion. You need to have a framework. You need to have a way that people think of it kind of like a mobile, where the mobile balances its own weight. It's such that the ideas that are similar can have parity with others, and others are hanging down or above them. And keep it very, very simple. And you must repeat vital information, and you must vary the way you repeat them so that people have a different viewpoint on what's that. And then finally, for those that you've really gotten on the bus, you want to tell them how to move on from here. Are you going to give more talks on it? Will you give more talks if they ask? Are there good YouTube resources or books or television shows or DVDs that they can do? A path forward is really the thing, because if there's not going to be a path forward and you're not going to tell them what it is, why are they there? Because they're not going to do anything based on one half-hour, hour-long talk. Okay. Human memory has been studied very, very extensively in the last, well, 70 years, but more like the last 30 years. And we're finding out a lot of things about people. The old thing about doing logic and, deductive reasoning, no. People don't learn that stuff. Mathematics, they don't learn that stuff. You have to be very trained to do that. What people learn are simple structures. And here's my take on 30 years of reading cognitive science. Personalities. We're all in love with personalities. Babies are born recognizing the human face. And they very quickly recognize different faces. And what they learn beyond that is the sounds of voices and the accents and speech patterns of other people. And finally, as they get older, they learn behavioral patterns. We are wired for personalities. We love personalities. The structures that you convey the information, the mobile that you hang things on, the square, the three-legged stool, whatever, they must be simple. They must be expressible on the back of an envelope, or you have failed. Stories. One of the big things that's come out of cognitive research is when you tell people stories, either visual stories or narrative stories, they remember that. And this is where you add humor. And I'm not saying take your talk down a dark alley where you tell them what happened when you were in grad school at the age of 27 and you went to England and got lost. You can do that, but it needs to have a point. It needs to be quick, but it should have something human about you in it. And then, of course, bringing it all back home, as Bob Dylan said, connections to your daily life, to professional and personal activities, and common problems. In other words, hit them where they live. Okay, you've got to know your materials. And by that, I mean, if you keep your materials well organized and simple, it shouldn't be a problem. You make a detailed outline for yourself. And if you think that they need that detailed information, put it in a separate handout and decide whether to give it to them beforehand or afterwards. You also need to think about the participant's point of view. Think about, why did this person come here? What should she remember when she leaves? And what should she do when she's gone? And I would tell you the story about Don Novello on Saturday Night Live. Some of you may remember about the 5-minute university, where he was teaching people what they would remember 5 years after they left university. Well, that's kind of what happens is as people leave a talk, as time goes on, their memory declines really, really rapidly. That's why you have to have a few stellar, shining points, because that's really all you can hope anyone will remember. And you must outline your outline. Be ready to be so short that you think you've even left it out, because that's when you see where the gold is. Where are the pearls in your wisdom? Be prepared to discard material, condense material. You must get feedback from people, and you must time and practice your top-level sessions. I've timed this thing about 3 times now. And decide what notes you need. The secret here is, I was going to put on the slide, best answer is none. Okay. Context. What kind of room are you in? Is it dark? Is it light? In a light room, people's attention requires a louder voice. In a dark room, people can tolerate and will expect more of an intimate setting. Is it loud? Through no fault of your own. Is it online? Estimating backgrounds of people. This is to go in and say, can I really talk about some research? Can I do things that other people might have studied in school? Can I mention those? Are people here financially okay? Can I talk about buying a new car or happily buying a house and moving to the villages? Or should I not mention things like that? Are they healthy or are they ill? That's getting in your audience's head. You can't do a lot of this usually unless you really know something special, but you can try. And a lot of times, if you're a social worker or you've done anything, if you grew up in our world, you can look at the way people dress, the way they move, and you can get some idea. Then the meta goal, which is, what are you doing? Is this one shot? Do you want contributions? Are you looking for volunteers? Do you want to do another talk and want them to follow up? Do you want future contact? What is it you're after? And be honest with yourself. If you're not really asking anything from them, you should ask yourself, well, maybe I should. What can I be doing to make more out of this? And by the way, you're not there to impress anybody, right? You're not defending your dissertation. You're not curing AIDS. This is not about impressing peers. What you're doing is conveying information. I don't think that people should be subjected to some of this. I've done it. Everybody's done it. We've all done it, gotten up and given what we think is a brilliant talk, and then have people say, well, it was really cool, but I wish I'd understood it. You don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. Okay. Selling ideas. I believe that you should have no more than 3 ideas, but I put on the slide 5. Okay, and I'll tell you what I believe mine are. You got to believe in your key points. If you don't believe in your points, if you're selling somebody else's bananas, then you're not going to convince anybody. They have to be things that you've bought into. Okay, here's one of my key points. Structuring a talk. First, you tell them what you'll be telling them. You give them an introduction, which you saw me do. Then you tell them. That's what I'm doing now. And then you tell them what you told them. In other words, you hit them 3 times. Abstract, body, recapitulation. Boom, boom, boom. And there's no way to get around that. People will not remember. They only remember what's emphasized. And then it has to have a lot of other things around it, like personality, like context, like the stories and anecdotes and humor that make it all glue together. Again, don't read. Use emotion sparingly. By that I mean, don't pound the podium and wave your arms in the air, and don't be one of these, well, the next slide says that on 14th of July. No, you don't do that. Use them, but use them kind of sparingly. I use a little bit too much. Some people find me a little bit too voluble as a human being, including sometimes people I care about. But I believe that you should really pummel the ideas you believe in. And here's one of my things, and this is kind of me. This is a lot of the stuff you've heard before, other people will tell you. If you're in a live audience, with a live audience, what I do is I find a few allies in the audience. By allies, I mean people that look like I might be able to, have a drink with them or get to know them. Find a few, and typically I don't want to do friends. I want to do people I don't know. And I look at them and smile, maybe say, how's it going this afternoon? Glad you're here. See if they react with you. And if they do, and if they have expressive faces, watch them while you talk. See if they're tracking your humor. See if they're confused. See if they're nodding their head. See if they're looking away and bored. I call them allies, and I'll pick only 2 or 3 in the audience, and a mixture of people if I can get a mixture of people. And I watch them, and I let them give me feedback about what I'm doing. And if I really haven't got a clue still, then I will ask people questions like, what would you think the outcome of a program like this would be? Or what do you think the problems with this might be? And I also like to limit questions because I don't like people to interrupt. And a lot of times their interruptions are not particularly germane and they can really get things off track. Okay. I'm going off the screen share now, and I'm going to recapitulate a little bit. My main message so far is, I gotta be me. Da, da, da. I mean, you do. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to see who you are. Everybody wants to get to know you, the real you, and see, because their path to the information is why you care about it, why you believe in it. You're a saleswoman, whether you like it or not. And remember that the key to that is belief in the material and being relaxed. And when I say the other final thing about allies in the audience, if you think of the audience as 2 or 3 allies and not 50 people that you don't know, your interior tension relaxes. You're just like when I perform live in a club, I'll try to find a couple of people who are there out in the audience and watch their reaction to what I'm doing. Because then I feel like I'm just in somebody's living room playing the guitar for them. I don't feel like I'm trying to make everybody stand up and cheer. I'm trying to please individuals. And right now, that's what I'm trying to do, is sell your points. And I'm also trying to emphasize simplicity. The simpler it is, the better. Because remember, if you get it down to something really, really simple and you have time left over, you can expand, you can expatiate, you can take more questions, you can give more examples. If, on the other hand, you find yourself, running down the railroad track, hitting every railroad tie, bang, 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 because you've got 50 slides and every slide has 10 items, that's no fun for anybody. It's extremely nerve-wracking, and it's not going to convey the information. So simple is better. Leave a little room for something if you want to expand. Put an extra slide or two in there if you look up at the clock. And normally when you do this, it's 10 minutes after, and now you look at the clock and it's only 5 minutes after. Throw in something extra. Okay, so we're talking about treating the audience as individuals, being relaxed, recognizing that you're selling something, and understanding that the only way to get them on the bus is for them to believe that you want to be driving. Okay, so again, we're talking about checking in with the audience, and this is for live audiences. Zoom is different. I treat the audience as individuals. Mentally, my mental response is, I don't know what to make of 100 faces, but I know what to do with 3 or 4. And I try to pick people near in the front row. I try to look around, use my gaze and spread it over the audience. But when I'm looking to see whether I'm getting across my point, I look for a few allies. I use whatever humor I can, hopefully something that's dynamic and in the moment, like if somebody's making noise in the back of the room, or if, one of the lights is flickering, you can say, well, obviously somebody up there doesn't like me. You can use anything around you, just like a stand-up comic, to let people see inside you. And then what's the best thing is if you can bring humor into the conjunction, whatever's going on right now in conjunction with your talk with a little humor, that will bring everybody together. And if you really can't get a clue as to whether people are tracking, ask some simple questions. See who's listening. And of course, for dense presentations, break it into sections and have Q&A between them, because in general, the sessions themselves should be relatively straightforward, but I really believe a lot of the time, unless you're giving highly technical information or showing a how-to, like we're going to do with video and audio when we get permission to go back into the rec centers, you really need to isolate questions and answers, because they can go off in all kinds of tangents that you can't foresee. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about timing. One of the key hallmarks of the information they've discovered about human awareness, human attention. Human attention is limited. Most people can't multitask for beans. Most people can't listen for more than about 10 minutes. That's why Alfred Hitchcock knew this. When in Hitchcock movies, which I love, you'll see that whenever he wants you to know something about the MacGuffin, which is what he always called the plot, he'll have a flashback, a very simple flashback. Remember this guy? He was the guy who walked around and made a phone call in the phone booth in the last show, or that's the car that she was driving in the last scene. Human attention is very, very poor. And one of the big advantages of video is people can watch it again and get the information. I believe that any presentation over 45 minutes is doomed. I just don't believe in it. If you want to talk for 45 minutes, fine. You want to have some question and answers. I'm not counting question and answers. I'm not counting cookies and coffee. I'm saying actual mouth open, conveying information. 45 minutes is an absolute maximum. Anyone who does more than that is not really conveying information. They're on an ego quest. Break your presentation into sections with clear boundaries. There's a goal. The goal of section 1, which is this one, is to understand, and I'm recapitulating using my own example. The goal of number 1 is to make sure that you know that a simple message done honestly from a relaxed person who has practiced can win. Okay, section 2 is going to say using Zoom is easy, but you must understand the technology, and there are some ways to take some of the things I'm saying and apply it to the online video conference methodology. You do have to know and monitor your timing, and the only way to do that is to practice. Now, I'm not monitoring my timing right now because I think I'm talking fast enough as it is, but I've done this 2 or 3 times on video, and I know that I'm probably within about 5 minutes of where I'm going to end this. So one of the slides here is video considerations. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I have a guitar student that I've had for a long time. He was a guy I used to work with at Microsoft. And every time I would teach him something, he would go onto YouTube and look it up and see if I knew what I was talking about. He was one of those people who was Missouri, the show me state. He wanted to show me, and but he usually found I was right. But what he taught me was there's everything on YouTube. And what he does with his guitar is he'll sit and take something and he'll play it slowly, because you can do that on YouTube. And you can watch things over and over and over again. And you can watch them basically anywhere that you have a signal. You can watch them, when you're sitting in a square. So when you do video, you don't have as much need for repetition, because if you tell people this is a talk and it's going to be on YouTube, and it's going to be on YouTube in the next day or two, and we'll send you a link, they know they can go back and find find that and get the information again. And occasional slides or other materials, you're going to be provided with these PDFs. The camera simulates eye contact. Again, the same thing kind of holds true with a live audience. If you're in an audience full of 50 people, most people don't know if you're really looking at them or not. That's why you kind of scatter your gaze around the room to kind of be inclusive and not preferentially talk to your wife in the front row. But the idea is that you can make it look like you are really giving the audience your personal time by looking into the camera. Body movements and gestures should be small and well contained. Vocal dynamics means how loud and how soft the voice is. Keep it within a certain range, because that's where the mic's going to work well, where your audience will hear you, where the speakers are not going to distort. Nobody likes it when somebody starts doing this and then the voice kind of drifts off. You don't want to drift off like that. You want to be somewhat sustained, and that's why it's great to do one of these Zooms with somebody else and see how your voice comes across for the entire thing. Again, stay in the frame. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm looking here at my time. I went over just a little bit. I am, as they say in the trade, damn near done. I do want to reemphasize again that you are the means by which people will get the information. It's not because it was published by somebody or written in some model or you got it out of this wonderful book or whatever. No. You're the conveyor, you're the proselytizer. It's a quasi-religious model that I'm talking about here, because human experience is based upon that. Why do you think there's religions everywhere? I mean, religion are like fungus. They spring up everywhere. And the reason they do is because people want to be told from the pulpit, this is what's going on. And that's what you're doing. But I always caveat, as I did at the beginning of this slide, this is my opinion. This is what I believe. And people say, yeah, I know you're not God, you're not perfect, but I do want to hear what you have to say because you sound interesting. You sound like you believe in what you're doing. And I would like to say, as a closing remark, that I enjoy my interaction with TLC. I hope that this first talk has given you some impetus to simplify, relax, practice, and believe in yourself. Because if you don't, nobody else will. Thank you very much. I'm now going to unmute the masses.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, David.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. That was great.
Thanks. I didn't go into the whole deal, but I started performing music live when I was about 16. And I'd always given talks in classes since I was in early grade school. And then I got into the technology business, and I'm one of those rare non-introvert geeks. And so I used to get dragged out to do a lot of presentations and talks to people. And I remember once I had to introduce a whole new operating system. So I had 2 hours a day for a week, and I was videoed, and they sent the videos all over the world. And I don't know that I'm super good at this, but I believe that there's somebody whoever's got a dog can mute their audio. I believe that my funny intersection is that I'm one of the few people that I know who had to present both very highly technical software and material and mathematical material, and also played in rock bands. Okay, and in both cases, I'm telling you that there's a lot of similarity, and the similarity is you've got to believe in yourself and you got to believe in your message. Any questions that I can answer before I put this video together and throw it up on YouTube? Yes, Pat.
Yeah, I have some questions. What you said was wonderful. And I'm assuming what you said would be perfect for what you're doing now. What we're going to be doing for your key to senior living options, we're not going to see anybody who's listening to us. So we're going to be basically looking at ourselves on the screen or any PowerPoint that we put up there.
Right. I got it.
So what you were saying was so helpful to me, that you were saying, find some allies in the audience. What ally? I'm going to be looking at my own face.
Hold on, Pat. Remember, when you do these things, you're going to be able to get a couple of people on there with you, right?
I don't think
Sure. You can invite other people. All you got to do is send them the Zoom meeting ID and they can be on there with you. And
I thought Maureen is going to take all of them out because she said we won't have that. There can be up to 100
we need to talk to her about this, and she needs to get with the program. First of all, I would say that the basic answer to your question in situations like that is you practice it. This is what I did. I gave it live to Bonnie, and then I gave it on video to Lou, so that you can find your allies by doing a practice meeting. All you have to do is pick a couple of people who don't think exactly like you do and give it to them and get some critical feedback, right? That's one. The other thing is you don't have to have other people in the meeting talking back and asking questions. You can have them there just because you're a human being and you need some feedback. They can be there and nod their heads. My wife is really good at that. She's very supportive of me. When I got off the video, she was nodding her head. I didn't hear her. She doesn't have to be part of the video. But I took a deep breath and went, oh, I didn't screw up too bad. So practicing with your own offline, with your own meetings that are not part of that recapitulate the talk. And the other is see if you can have some allies when you're in the middle of the talk, because once again, this comes down to how do you get relaxed in that milieu? And one way you do is by having friendly faces smiling back at you.
So you're talking about somebody being in the room with you when you're on the Zoom?
No, I'm talking about somebody else in the Zoom meeting. Why can't somebody else be in her Zoom meeting?
Okay. Yeah, she said she was going to have everything shut off except for what will show up in the video, which is going to be the speaker and the slides. But we can talk to her and see if there's any other option.
Okay, I believe there will be other options. And even if there are not, if you give the talk, if you have given that talk and you've had reactions to it as you give the talk, giving it again, because I mean, I know because I went through this whole talk before, back in March when we thought I was going to do it. I went through the whole thing. It didn't have a Zoom section then, but I went through the whole thing all alone in my room. And then I watched the whole thing and I sent it to Bonnie and she watched it. I think somebody else, I don't know if it's you, Pat, or Lou, but somebody else watched that long thing. And the point is to get feedback, but you can practice. You know, I do a lot of recording. You've seen my YouTube channel. How do I get relaxed and feel like I can do it? By doing it. That's the only answer.
I always practice. I practice on my lanai, but it's in my imagination. But when I'm looking at my picture in the screen is what's getting me nervous.
You need,
okay. Present to myself.
You need to practice that. In other words, all practice should be as close to the real thing as possible. And there's no reason why you can't call Lou or somebody on the phone or Joe and say, hey, get on me with Zoom. I'm going to bounce 15 minutes of stuff off you and thank you and tell me what you think. Okay?
You know what would be good is when we have people give presentations to the club is to advise that they watch this video training.
Absolutely.
Because when some of the presenters have good information, but they try to give us too much.
Yes.
And I really liked what he did about saying, limit it to like 3 points or whatever.
Yeah. Well, my main message there was, if you're really going to give people, if you've got a lot of information, you either pre-teach them by sending them out something before the meeting, just review it, or you post-teach them and send it out after, okay? You cannot, the lecture model doesn't work, people. Right. It doesn't work.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes?
How much time do you think is an appropriate amount of time for Q&A?
I think 15 minutes.
Okay. So if we're doing an hour-and-a-half presentation for CEUs, for CEUs, and we have an introductory, setting up.
Do you count Q&A in that hour and a half?
I'm sorry?
Do you count Q&A in that hour and a half?
Yeah.
Then give it for an hour, half an hour question and answer.
Okay.
And another thing that's easy to do for Q&A is breakouts, right? Where you give people little assignments and that gives them a chance to play with the ideas with a little milieu of 4 or 5 other people. And I know Elaine does this in Way to Go on it. And there's a breakout room feature in Zoom, which I have not used, so I can't expatiate about it. But the idea is you could teach a 45-minute session, have a 20-minute breakout and a 25-minute question and answer, and you're good to go, okay? Because people should get their hands dirty. Yes, Bonnie?
I just wanted to say I've participated. I haven't been the host in those meetings where there have been breakouts, but it's really great because you can break them down in small groups of, say, 3 or 4 people, and they can talk about the ideas, and then they can come back with some questions from the whole group.
So,
How complicated is it to introduce that to an audience?
Not at all. You just tell them, I'm going to put you into groups now, and you just click,
what they do,
yes, I want to join.
What they do, by the way, at Your Keys people, is they have a couple of slides they stick into their presentations that tells people how to do it. Little screenshots that show people where to click. And I've stolen one of those for my next part of this talk, which is the presenting with Zoom. But all they do is they say, okay, we're going to break out. Here's how you do it. And if it doesn't really super work for everybody, it's not the end of the world. But again, this is new to a lot of people, and I think it just really isn't that difficult. If they're already on Zoom and doing it, they pretty much can't screw up. They can get into the breakout room and do that.
That might help, because an hour and a half is a long time to fill.
Yeah.
And
You
people
and I
like to
can
hear
talk about it.
people like to hear their own voices too much. You've got to give them a chance to blow air. Otherwise, they're really going to not like you for the rest of your day. And it's true. We're all legends in our own minds. Clint Eastwood said it. It's true. Any other questions, folks?
David, I got a question for you.
Sure.
My presentation has been divided into 3 15-minute sections.
Great.
I'm the guy with the
Like
three-legged
stool. I know. I
notes.
worked on that art project.
And by the way, and thank you for helping me put all that together on PowerPoint. Question is, you have any hints for me or anyone else who is having a subject matter divided into 3 parts?
My main thing about that is, I'm a computer guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard, and I'm going to use a term here that it sounds a little geeky. You ever heard the term mutually exclusive and exhaustive?
Yes.
What that means mathematically is that if you're defining things and categorizing things, mutually exclusive means they're all really, really distinct. They're not the same. They don't share similarities. Exhaustive means that's all there are. Okay, that's really all there are. Okay. My problem with a lot of models, and I've heard a lot of them from Bonnie, and I've read a bunch of them myself, and in general, I'm kind of model schmodel, show me the equations. But the thing about a lot of paper models is I want to hear, at least, hopefully, clearly and definitively, or at least by repetition and an example, exactly what the differences are between the 3 legs of the stool. How you distinguish some particular bit of behavior or some event, and you know that it belongs over here versus over there versus here, because what happens is people will have these models and they won't recognize just how many, what we call edge cases, how many boundary cases there are that really don't fit. They're not fish or fowl. So in other words, what I would be listening for if I were in your audience, and what I was kind of looking for when I looked at your diagram was, how does this help from government distinguish help from healthcare, right? I mean, how is that different? Or what am I looking at to know that this particular thing I'm talking about, like somebody gets a volunteer organization to help with daycare, does that belong on this leg or on that? In other words, really have crisp, clear definitions so people come out with a working model that says, oh yeah, the family's over here and the religious organization's over there, and they kind of got it, because they've got the idea of what the different legs look like. I'm guessing here, I haven't looked at your model in a month, but I'm saying what I look for in a model is crispness of definition. That's me. Yes, Bonnie.
But also, taking the example from your presentation today where you said, I'm going to be covering this in 3 parts. Today we're going to do this part, and this is how it fits in the whole.
Right.
And then in the second one, you again reiterate the overall subject, and you're doing part 2, and it's this leg of the stool, and your stool will come in handy. And I think that'll kind of follow what David did today with, here's the 3 parts, we're doing this part today.
Yeah, but because mine's not a model, I'm looking, my whole thing was, what really is a talk? A talk is the person talking, and the talk and the body of what the person is giving is the talk. And then there's the means to an end, whether it's live or on video. So mine isn't really a model. It's more like parts of a clock. You know what I mean? Every part has to be there or it doesn't tick. Yours, somebody can ask you the question, well, I think there could be a 4th leg, or I'm not sure why you need 3 legs. Why aren't legs 2 and 3 the same? You know, and you have to answer that question.
Good. I thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I think you'll find in my presentation, at least I hope you'll find in it what you've been talking about.
I do too, and I'm not sure I'm going to see it. Actually, I will, because I'll have to edit the video down. By the way, guess what? I want to show you something. See this, Pat?
Yeah.
My birthday present to me. It's a Panasonic Lumix camera. And I have some other equipment to go with it, which I won't bore you with right now, but it is the means by which we're going to be able to record any live sessions that we do.
Oh, nice.
So I actually have a really professional setup now, and hopefully we'll do that because as much as I like Zoom, I would much rather do this with real people and have real high def and be able to put out really good quality. If there are no more questions, I'm going to wind this up. I'm going to put a
I have one more question.
Yes.
You mentioned something called plosives and sibilants, which I never heard.
Okay.
How do you avoid that if you're talking on the screen?
Did you notice what I did? I just moved the mic out of my way. So when I do a P, I'm blowing over the mic. Now, I want to say when you have a lavalier or a desk mic, you don't really have to worry about that. It's when people have handheld mics or close mics.
I'm talking on doing one of these Zoom presentations.
Right. Remember, right now, you wouldn't be able to generate a plosive because your webcam's microphone is too far away from you to do it.
I wanted to hear that, David. That's what I wanted.
Not your only if you can't lick the mic, you don't have that problem.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Are we good to go then? Can I shut this puppy down?
I just want to say, what would we do without you and Bonnie? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
It was nice to see everybody.
Okay, so we'll schedule. We'll be talking about scheduling the second one using Zoom, but everybody's doing pretty well. We're getting there. Bonnie's been bringing all of y'all into the 21st century, and we'll do that. The second one is going to be fairly easy, and it's going to be a practice run for a lot of stuff like raising hands and breakout rooms and and also adjusting your screen and teaching other people how to do it. The third one will require that we go live into a thing, and you got to put your hands on cords and amplifiers and mics and and that will have to wait until we all believe we're not going to die.
Okay.
All righty. On that happy note.
Seeing everybody. Take
care. Bye-bye.
Nice meeting. Thank you. Good to see you. Bye.
Don't forget to leave.